episode number 54. And today we have a spotlight on a really honored guest for me. And I'll tell you a little bit more about why in a couple of minutes. But Dr. Tony Alessandra, let me tell you a little bit about who he is. He says that he has a streetwise, college smart perspective. And that's my experience as well on business and having been raised in the housing projects in New York City. He has some stories to tell and eventually moved beyond that and realized success as a graduate professor of marketing, internet entrepreneur, business author, Hall of Fame keynote speaker. He earned a BBA from Notre Dame, which, you know, we'll have to keep him from talking about Notre Dame because he's a big fan. An MBA from the University of Connecticut, a PhD in marketing in 1976 from Georgia State University. He is the founder and chairman of his current business, Assessment 24/7 LLC. It's a company that offers a wide variety of assessments, including the DISC profile, which I'm sure we can talk a little bit about today. And here's a big one, Emotional Intelligence 360, which there's a lot of research on the importance of that in today's world. Motivators, which is a values assessment, and several other 360 type assessments. He's a prolific author of 32 books. You know, reading his bio just makes me tired.
I think I should just leave.
It makes me feel tired. So I'm going to just stop here because there's so much to talk about with regard to Dr. Tony Alessandra. And I will say he is not only a dear friend of Bersabeh and mine, but he also was one of my very early business mentors. So it's very special to have you here today. Tony, welcome.
Yes. Thank you.
So where do we start? In fact, why don't we start at the beginning? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? Other than what we've already talked about, maybe you want to talk about the New York City childhood, I don't know, and how you got started. You've been in business a long time. So tell us a little bit about your story, if you would.
Yeah, so as you said, I grew up in New York City. My father was a New York City cab driver back in the 50s. I lived in the projects, which is the low-income, high-rise buildings. We eventually moved to Brooklyn, Coney Island area, then to New Jersey and the Jersey Shore, Seaside Heights, Toms River. I was brought up in Catholic schools. Last 2 years of high school was a public school, Toms River High School. But of course, Notre Dame is Catholic. So if you look at my first 16 years, 14 of them were in Catholic schools.
And I'm sure that you have a lot of stories to tell about that too, right?
Oh, I do. And my knuckles have healed from the rulers. Yeah, it was interesting. So anyway, I went off to Notre Dame. I actually was going to go to Rutgers, which was the state university in New Jersey where I was living. But my mother really wanted me to go to Notre Dame because of the prestige. My parents only had enough money to pay for my first year. And I lucked out between my freshman and sophomore year. I got a job selling cookware door to door. And that was the first big break. I earned enough money in the summer of the summer of '66 to pay for all my tuition, room, board, spending money, travel, you name it. Made a lot of money selling cookware. And it's interesting, as a side note, as I was selling cookware door to door in New Jersey, a top salesperson was selling cookware in Texas by the name of Zig Ziglar. We both were selling the same exact cookware called Salad Master.
Wow.
Well, I did that between my sophomore and junior years, which was '67, did that in '68, and paid for all of my education. When I graduated Notre Dame, went for my physical for Vietnam, and I failed it because of an injury that I incurred playing rugby at Notre Dame. So
Wow.
That was interesting. Went to UConn, got my MBA there, and spent 3 years teaching at the university level. First at Susquehanna University in Pennsylvania for 2 years, and then at Cal State Fullerton for a year. And I figured, hey, it was 1972, 73, and I really enjoyed university level teaching, so I decided to go back and get my PhD. Went to Georgia State. The reason I picked Georgia State, early on in my life, I had read 3 books that I think really had a big impact on me. One was Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, which was the mechanics of the mind. A second was, believe it or not, 30 Days to a More Powerful Vocabulary, because I really did have an issue with vocabulary. Yeah, I was New York, Brooklyn, then those, use guys. So I had to really improve my vocabulary and my diction, in terms of speaking. But a third book was called The Magic of Thinking Big by Dr. David Schwartz. It just so happened that at Georgia State University, in the marketing department, David Schwartz was a professor. I called up, asked him if he would be my dissertation chairman and work with me. He agreed, so I went to Georgia State. They also gave me a teaching position as an instructor, so it paid for all of my expenses while I lived there. Anyway, 3 years there. In 76, got my PhD, decided to stay in teaching, went to the University of San Diego, which is where I live now, San Diego, and where we met, James. I was there for a little over 2 years when I had to make a decision. Do I want to stay in teaching or do I want to speak? And I actually started speaking a little while I was at Georgia State. I had, at that point, had taught for almost 8 years, decided, let me give full-time speaking a try. So in January of 79, became a full-time speaker. That summer, joined the National Speakers Association, and I was off to the races. Now, here's an interesting thing. Because I'm going to tie it into the assessment business and why that intrigued me so much. While I was getting my PhD, I finished all my coursework. I went to this seminar sometime in 1974 after I had finished all my coursework. And it was built around social styles, the 4-style model where they talked about the driver, expressive, amiable, analytical. And I was hooked just from this one evening. I looked at that. I went back to Dr. David Schwartz. I said, Dr. Schwartz, I want to change my dissertation topic. I want to do it on this subject. He said, absolutely not. Your proposal was accepted. Finish what you proposed. And when you get out of here, if you want to go into the assessment business, do it. But what really intrigued me about assessments was back in 1973, while I was teaching at Cal State Fullerton, a student came to me and he showed me this assessment he had taken. And it showed him what occupations he would be good at. And he said, it's free for faculty and students. So I went and took it, looked at it, and I said, this is ridiculous. There's no possible way on earth. I agreed with number 2 and 3. I did not agree with number 1. But number 2 was a salesperson. Yes, I was a salesperson. Number 3 was a marketing and merchandising. Yes, that's definitely me. Number 1, I could not agree with. I took the results of it.
Number 1 was what?
I'll tell you in a second. I put it away. I filed it away. And, it just... This was 1973, filed it away. Back in, I guess it was the 90s, early 90s, I was going through all my file cabinets and scanning things. I come across this test. I could not believe number 1.
Oh,
public speaker.
Oh.
Back in 73, it wasn't even in my frame of consciousness. Public speaker? You got to be kidding me. I was a teacher, but not a public speaker. But anyway, that test was so right on. And I said, assessments really, really can dig into your mind. To me, I call it an MRI of the mind.
Mm.
That's what assessments are. And that assessment nailed me. The first three occupations were exactly what I excelled in and what I still excel in to this day. Uh, so, but you came along in the what was it, like the mid to late 80s? I think it was probably maybe
It was,
87, 88,
yeah, about 86, 87.
86. Yeah. Uh, and of course, then I was a professional speaker. I had already been inducted into the Speakers Hall of Fame in 1985. But I got to tell you, and you know this, James, because we've talked about this over the years. As time went on, I started burning out with all the travel. It was just too grueling for me. I didn't like it. I liked speaking, but I did not like the travel.
Right.
So in 2000 is when I finally said, you know what? I'm going to build this assessment business and build it online and build it with somebody that you sent to me, Brandon Parker. He was working with you. You sent him over to me, and he's now my CEO and runs the company.
We want him back. Can we have him back?
I don't think so.
But
Yeah.
let me interject here, because obviously modern alchemy, what we talk about is transmutation, the art and science of transmutation, taking something and turn it of low value sometimes and turn it into something of high value, taking one thing and making it something completely different. And you've already addressed that in many ways. Let me back up for a minute, because you're in a completely different profession, obviously now, even though there's a pathway. But I know you've been in business for a long time, and I know some of your story. In fact, I went and saw you present years ago, and you started off with one of your opening statements was, "I've gone from broke to self-made millionaire twice," and the whole audience laughs. So you've gone through some down times, and there's a lot of people dealing with down times right now in the world. And so what I'd like to hear from you, or what are some of your greatest lessons from your down times, best lessons you've learned from the down times?
Yeah, well, I would say uh, when I'm down, and there truly weren't many times. I've been very blessed because I didn't have many real downturns. But when I hit something like that, my mantra is, "This too shall pass," and it eventually does. But it really helps when you have somebody, which I have with Sue, for instance, my wife, uh, that you can commiserate with, that can help support you, that gives you those pats on the back that you need to get through the downs. Of course, one of the big things when you said, "Yeah, I've been a millionaire twice," uh, I wonder if people could realize, yes, I've been divorced. So that was one time where I lost the whole thing. Yeah, and that was a downtime. And then one of my big real estate investments in Las Vegas sort of tanked, and that
I
was
remember that.
definitely more than $1 million loss. But I am an optimist. I mean, really an optimist. So I always look for that little bit of silver lining in dark clouds,
Hmm.
and typically always find it. Uh, I don't think I've ever really been depressed. Uh, certainly I've been down, but again, I always know this too shall pass, and I keep a positive outlook. Always looking for positive things to get me through.
And are there specific things that you do during the "this too shall pass" time periods in your life, specific things you do that keep you moving forward? Because I know you do. You're a charger.
Yeah, well, it all revolves around relationships
Mm.
to me. So it's not just Sue, who I'm with every single day, but also my buddies like you. And, calling up, talking, "Hey, what's going on with you?" Are we experiencing the same things? Maybe we can help each other through this. Is it just me that's experiencing it? And if so, what are you doing different than what I'm doing? Maybe I could learn something. One of our mutual buddies, Don Hudson, he was great. He would always, when I call him, I'd ask him things, but he would call me and he would say, Tony, since we've talked last, what new things have you discovered, to help you improve or get better or whatever? And it always makes you sort of say, what was it? What is different? And once he started doing that with me, I started doing it with other people. What are you doing different? What's working for you? What isn't working? So, it really does help to talk to people and let them help you get through any difficult times. As sometimes it's very, very little, sometimes not at all. Sometimes, boom, it's like an incredible idea that somebody gives you that you didn't realize was that big. So, but a lot of it is I just stay in touch with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the king of remembering birthdays. You've shamed me into being better at that because I don't think there's ever been a
It's
year
true.
that I didn't get an e-card from you, and we've known each other how long now? I mean, decades. Decades for sure. And I truly believe, and I probably got some of this from you in the early days, that you can measure the quality of your life by the quality of your relationships. And I totally resonate with you because in my real dark down times in 2013, coming out of my dysfunctional vacation in Arizona, Bersabeh has been there with me. You've been there with me. You were one of the few friends that stood with me through the storm, and probably I don't know. I could guess maybe took some heat from some people. Why are you doing this? Because I was so maligned and attacked in the media. We met all the way back in the '80s, and when I moved to San Diego from Atlanta, and you were so far ahead of me that you were like a speck on the horizon in your business. I mean, I could barely envision that for myself. And you opened up to me. And I'm curious, why did you open up to me at that time and take me under your wing? Because I approached a lot of people when I moved to San Diego. And most of them wouldn't even take my call, much less see me. And you opened your office to me and had me come in, if you'll recall. And I'm just curious why you did that, because you really didn't need to at that point in your career.
Yeah, well, I think it goes back again to my strong belief in relationships. And, it's not that I help everybody, but I almost always will take the first call or the first visit, uh, and size somebody up and decide, is this going, will this person be a good person to mentor? Uh, am I willing to spend time with this person, not just from a business perspective, but also a personal perspective? Uh, Heck, before you, a couple of years earlier, another person had come down to San Diego from Canada, and I met with him, a guy named Brian Tracy. This is before he really hit it big, and
And
I
were
encouraged
you ahead of him at the time?
at the time. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
I did not know that after all these years.
yeah. No, and see, Brian and I are still very, very good friends. He and Barbara and me and Sue. No, he and Barbara and Sue and I. Uh,
Still working on
after
the
30,
language.
30 days, yeah. After 30 days, more powerful grammar. Uh,
Right.
but we go out maybe every 3 months. We go out to dinner. Uh, and when you were here, when you were living in San Diego, we were going out all the time.
Right.
So, but going back to your thing, why you? Uh, you meet with some people and you get a feeling. Is this somebody that I want to do business with? Is this somebody that I want to deepen the relationship with? And I got that feeling with you. I got it with Brian. Rick Barrera. He was also mid 80s was really where a lot of people I connected with. And that's why, I just saw a potential there. I didn't realize how much potential because you skyrocketed after a while, way beyond me, so, and for a while, Rick Barrera went beyond me, Brian Tracy, way beyond me, so,
I think that's a mark of a good mentor. It really is. So I know there's a lot of viewers who would say, well, first of all, do you believe that mentoring is important? Why or why not?
Well, I do. I've had mentors and role models. There's a difference, by the way, between the two. A mentor is really a one-on-one relationship, and a role model could be somebody, but a role model could be somebody who's dead. You could be reading about Ben Franklin and say that's a role model, or Abraham Lincoln, that's a role model, etc. So a role model could be just somebody that I want to aspire to acquire a trait or more of theirs, whereas a mentor, it really is a true one-to-one relationship. So I really think mentors are important.
So you don't believe in this? I hear this a lot. Hey James, we watch you and Bersabeh on YouTube, and we watch your videos. You're my mentor. So, according to your definition,
that doesn't count.
True or false?
No, you're a role model. You're their role model, not their mentor.
Right.
So
I think that's a really key distinction in today's world, and I like the idea of role model. You've heard me talk about
role model, yeah.
Not role model. I've called it. They can be your teacher, but a mentor is different. But I think role model is maybe even a better term than teacher as a role model. So let's say that one of our viewers is in search of a real mentor, and I certainly was when I came to your office. What specific things would you suggest that they do or don't do when approaching someone that they'd love to network with and to have as potentially a mentor?
Yeah, so I want to bring up the example of Rick Barrera, who I think when he came here and wanted to, have me mentor, me and Phil Wexler at the time, he was only making like $28,000 a year. But here's what I would suggest. Do your homework. Know about the person, okay? Study the person who you want to be your mentor. Then when you study that person, see, when Rick Barrera came out here, he knew all about me. He knew what I did. And he said, I'd like to partner with you in a way, and have you be my mentor. But before you even decide that, allow me to do something for you. And that's what he did. He went out and booked a presentation for us, and he wanted to, do some writing with us, and we had him, do this, do this, do this, do this, and he always went out and did things, and came back and said, what else, what else, what else, he's a very successful consultant now, so that's what I would do. The two key things are: make sure you study the person, make sure you're going there and not asking them, with your hand out, I want a handout, but going there, explaining why you want them to be your mentor, and possibly what is it that you can also help them with or do for them. And when you get advice from the mentor, and it's hopefully good advice, you do it and go back and explain to the mentor what you what you did, how it worked, why it might not have worked. Could you give me some advice? It didn't work. Uh, and just go from there. Just make sure that you keep in touch.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, do you remember the specifics of our initial meeting by chance?
I don't. Was it at that little place in La Jolla, that little eating area?
No, we met in your office the first time,
Oh, we did.
and you were sitting at a table in the back room. I'm not, I think, I don't know for sure, but I think you had a formal office in your home, and then you had your team in this small office in La Jolla.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so that was when I was on Country Club Drive. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so I didn't do my homework. I mean, I sort of did. I knew all of your Nightingale Conant programs and all of those things. So I would give myself maybe a C or a C plus on doing homework. But I remember it vividly because you had a new program that you just put together, and I'll tell you, for the viewer, this kind of dates me and Tony, not Bersabeh so much, but it dates me. And
You weren't even born.
No, I was like 5. I think I was 5 years old.
In the 80s.
85, 86.
Oh, please!
I was 5 years old.
So
That's why I'm quiet.
Yeah. So anyway, you had just and here's the dating part is that it was a paper training course that was bound, and it was something about team performance or something of that nature. And I at the time was doing business consulting. And I remember I came in and sat down across from you, and your first statement, we said hello, and then you said, "Well, what can I do for you?" And I said, "Nothing really. I just want to know you." I didn't even fathom that you would take me under your wing. Didn't even cross my mind. I just want to know you. And that was genuine. I just wanted to know you. And because you were way, way up there for me at the time. And so then we conversed and you showed me this new program. And I was doing business consulting at the time. I hadn't started doing speaking. And I had 2 clients. And I said to you, "Hey, I might be able to take this program and sell it to my client for you. This might be a good product for them." And so I think with your second piece, even if I didn't get an A on homework, I just genuinely wanted to help and to do something to help spread your message because I believed in it. So I think that's a really strong message for people in today's world. I fully believe, and I think you would agree, Tony, that winners and leaders don't think about what can I get. They think about what can I give. And the more I give, then just naturally things are going to come back to me. So I deeply appreciate our relationship, and let's shift gears here for a moment. I know your formal education is in marketing, but you built a career, and this is transmutation, maybe, but there's certainly corollaries. You built a career about knowing people, their strengths as well as their challenges. How does this work with marketing as well as the businesses you?
So, going through school, my minors were always in the social sciences and psychology. So I always had an interest in that. And again, it almost goes back to that psycho-cybernetics book, which really, really impacted me. And I read a lot of self-help books back then when I was a teenager and early in college. But this whole thing about knowing about people, maybe it's this emotional intelligence. I don't know what it is. I do feel that I have natural emotional intelligence. I pick up a lot of things about people. facial expressions, body language, vocal inflection, and without even consciously doing it. It's just an unconscious thing. But the whole thing about I loved psychology. I love the assessments. It's just something that I was naturally intrigued with. Yeah. So, a lot of it is, this whole concept of being aware of people, asking questions, learning about them. If we're looking at the sales process, making sure that I understand what your problem or need is before I start even talking about any kind of solution. We have a saying that I've used for actually in my first book, Non-Manipulative Selling. Prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. So a lot of it is trying to understand the person or the situation before providing any kinds of solutions. When I went through marketing, one of the big courses in marketing was consumer behavior. There was psychology. What makes people tick? What makes them buy things? What affects their behavior? This is all psychology. And I really think that psychology and marketing are very, it's like hand in glove. It's not that they're two totally separate things. They overlap each other. So I was always intrigued with it. Emotional intelligence. Here's one thing about emotional intelligence. When it comes to hiring people, you can always teach people the job, but it may not be as easy to teach them people skills and this emotional intelligence. Not that you can't teach it, but if I can get somebody who automatically has great communication skills, people skills, emotional intelligence, I would hire that person before I would hire somebody who is expert just in product knowledge. Because you can always teach the product knowledge. It's a lot more difficult to teach the people skills and communication skills. Not impossible, but more difficult.
Your formal education obviously is in marketing, and yet you built an entire career on knowing about people and different types of people. How do those two things fit together in your mind?
Well, I think marketing and psychology or communications are like hand in glove. They fit together. One of the big courses that I had to take in marketing was consumer behavior. What makes people tick? Why do they buy things? What's their psychology? So, I think that they really are closely aligned with each other. And I was always drawn to the psychology end of marketing, and that's why I got into the assessment business eventually, because it's all about understanding people. What makes people tick? So,
we live in a world that's obsessed with IQ, and we take tests to measure it. We get numbers that we want to grade ourselves by. Some of us are proud of our numbers, some of us aren't. And yet mounds of research prove that EQ and now what we call AQ, adaptability intelligence, are far and away more predictive of both life and business success than IQ ever has been or ever will be. I mean, you can be an intellectual giant and be an emotional slave. So I love that you've mentioned EQ a couple of times. I'd love to hear you share your opinion on that, on EQ and its impact on businesses and our relationships and all those things.
Yeah, and there are multiple intelligences. There's not just intellectual intelligence. There's emotional intelligence. There is street smarts, which is knowing the environment around you. Athletes have sort of a physical smarts, kinetic or kinesthetic kind of smarts. So there's a lot of different smarts that people have. But again, in the world, when we have to deal with other people, okay, maybe if I'm not a computer programmer where I'm in a room by myself, meals are slid under the door and I don't have to deal with anybody, that's rare. But we all have to deal with people. So if you could have emotional intelligence, in many situations, that trumps the IQ. There are many people with high IQ that absolutely cannot deal with another person. They're bankrupt when it comes to people skills. Give me somebody who has great people skills, and you can and teach them the basics of anything you want them to know, and they will excel. They will excel. So I'm a real big advocate of emotional intelligence. I have a soon-to-be 7-year-old grandson, and you can tell right from the beginning that this little kid oozes emotional intelligence. He loves people. He talks to everybody, gets along with everybody. But what really got me this one time, I went to see him in a little soccer game when he was maybe 4 or 5 years old. And it was a mixed gender, so little girls and boys. And one of the girls, during them playing soccer, had her feelings hurt, and she ran off the field crying. He stopped whatever he was doing. He walked off the field up to her and put his arm around her.
Oh.
Now at that age, it's just, this kid's going to go far, let me tell you, with emotional intelligence. And I wonder with all of the stuff that goes on virtually, with computers, with our cell phones, I wonder if that's robbing too many people of being good with other people.
Well, you kind of read my mind, because I it's interesting. Some of the younger generations say to me, well, I had a conversation with so-and-so. Oh, really? Did you call them? Or were you on Zoom? Oh, no, we texted. Okay, well, I'm sorry, that's not a conversation. But it is to them. So, yeah, you're mind reading me here, because I'm wondering what your opinion is on, obviously, your grandson. He may be an anomaly, because so many younger generations are living in their devices. They don't even look up from their devices. What impact is that having on communication, rapport, connection, emotional intelligence?
No, it's terrible. I'm sure that you guys have been out to dinner and you look at a family, with 1 or 2 kids and the mother and father. All of them are on their cell phones. Right. They're not communicating. We never did that when we were young. Of course, when I was young, there was no such thing as a computer. And you had to be, conversing with people. When I grew up, it was mandatory that you sat at the dinner table at dinner with the family. Whether you were hungry or not did not matter. You were there and you communicated. There was no distractions at the dinner table. Today, I wonder what percentage of families actually sit down and eat a meal together during the day.
You might want to talk to that with your experience.
No, I don't. Yeah, I grew up with a family where we didn't do that. So it was kind of foreign for me, because both parents are working and kids kind of, we took care of ourselves and was raised by the television. Then came out, there was video games, and then you got the internet coming out, and I can only imagine for a generation one behind me, it's 10 times worse, because now you got your devices.
Yeah, it really is. And it robs people of the practice and the experience that they need communicating with other people. The little granddaughter that I have, who's with this soon-to-be 7-year-old grandson, she just started. My daughter was going over to the YMCA where my grandson was taking swimming lessons. And so she put our 17-month-old granddaughter in the section where they watch the kids.
Mm.
And the first couple of times, she was all by herself. She didn't know what to do. But little by little, the third, the fourth, the fifth time, she started, really playing and connecting with other kids. So we need that experience of getting together with other people, preferably physically, face to face, not just on Zoom. Although Zoom is pretty good, but it doesn't truly take the place of one-on-one. We are together. But how many people get on Zoom? What they're doing is they're just on their PlayStations and their games and everything, and not having that communication experience, and it has an impact. I look at what's going on today about how kids in college, particularly. My gosh, if this went on when I was in college, I don't know.
I was going to ask you, how would it feel to be a college professor right now?
I would have been fired day one. Day one. Because the kids today, in my opinion, and I know I'm maybe exaggerating here a little.
Probably not.
But their feelings are hurt way too easily. And it almost seems like everything has to revolve around what's important to them. I don't want to be put out. I don't want to be, you said something that made me unsafe. Holy cow. Imagine me growing up in Brooklyn in an Italian neighborhood and saying to somebody, you said something that made me feel unsafe. Yeah, you want to feel unsafe? I'll give you unsafe. I don't know. I don't know where all this started. I don't know if it was the baby boomers who coddled their kids, or it was the Gen X who coddled their kids, or if it was everybody getting a trophy, for participation, so that there isn't a winner or a loser. And I can understand the rationale for that, but it seems like it's backfiring. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to get canceled now for all this.
No, not on our show. You're not, because we're in a similar position on this topic, and there is research out there that has proven that the participation trophies and all those type of things, they may have been well-meaning, and yet they've actually created more harm than good. And also the millennials, it's pretty well known that they don't like feedback. They really, and part of it is what, and of course Bersabeh's half millennial.
I'm half Gen X, half millennial.
She's right on the cusp.
So I can speak to that. Being married to James, we're 24 years apart. So there's a whole generation. And what I could tell the difference with is it's so different compared to the men my age, or even in their 30s. It's like they're not okay. So I got to be careful how I state this.
No, just go.
They're boys to me. They're not men. Let's put it that way. The generation of James, 65, 70, 75, 80. You guys are. It's like a completely different breed of men that don't exist right now.
Here's an interesting thing. One of our friends, I won't mention a name here, who's actually 65, got divorced and is dating women in their 20s. Now, whether you like that or not, who knows? And so I said to him, what do they see in you? You're 40 years older than these women. And here's what he said. He said, the men their age, all they want to do, they're so into their games and their own stuff, whereas I listen. This is what he was saying. I listen. I communicate with them, and the men of their age, in their 20s, late 20s, whatever, do not. So there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, they're into their devices and look at me on Instagram and take a selfie.
Let me get an ab shot and take a picture of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. The men they're women too. I don't know. It's
well, I probably a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I got disgusted with most of the online stuff. I'm only on LinkedIn now, but I canceled Facebook, I canceled Instagram, Twitter. There's just so much judgment that takes place on there. There's an old saying, I don't know if this is in the Bible or something, but he who is without sin cast the first stone.
Christ said that.
And the thing is, many of these people who criticize, they have so much baggage in their lives that they shouldn't be criticizing somebody else. I don't like what you were wearing. I don't like, it looks like you gained weight. It looks, I don't like the way you're bringing up your child. Or, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Mind your own business. And that's why I stopped it all. It just was a bitching session. That's what it was.
Well, I think
I agree.
Going back to the family dinner and the family breakfast that you had, and I had, by the way, and Bersabeh didn't have, but we do now. I mean, we eat every breakfast together.
Yeah, it's nice.
We eat every dinner together. We're not on our devices. We actually talk.
We communicate.
What a concept,
I know.
And we have
Seriously,
we have our coffee time in the morning is sacred, and I think we really, our personal opinion, and I don't know how to institute this, but lacking that kind of structure in our family units and in our world is causing a lot of problems, and it's causing separateness and division and all these types of things, which is rampant in our world right now. And so I mean, we could riff on this all day, and this is a topic that is so important. And let's go back to EQ, because it's all part of this EQ. And you have all these instruments and all these tools for individuals as well as businesses, and I would assume they're good for relationships too, to understand. I mean, Bersabeh's approach to life is very different than mine, and mine is very different to hers, and of course I'm right and she's not, but and I'm just teasing. But to be able to measure EQ and to understand those things, you have instruments to help with that. Can I take a test and it will tell me what my EQ is?
Yeah, absolutely. So and of course, we don't call them tests, by the way. We call them assessments. A test, in people's minds, it's right or wrong, whereas the assessment is, hey, this is what it is. Now, when it comes to emotional intelligence, we strongly believe in the, we call it our EQ 360, because we'll ask you a bunch of questions about how you respond to these various situations, what you believe, rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 5. And we find that there is a bias that people think they're more emotionally intelligent than they actually are. The 360 is, after you take the assessment, you get a link, and you can send that link to any number of people, right? And ask them, hey, would you answer these questions based on how you see me? And then when you get your results, which is, here's how you see yourself, and here's where these other people see you, and the other people can be, okay, let's just say it's we're talking on a personal environment. It could be, okay, Bersabeh, this is how your spouse sees you. This is how your siblings see you. This is how your your best friends see you. So that's on a personal basis.
Mhm.
In a business environment, this is how your immediate supervisor sees you, your peers, people you don't have any control over, your direct reports. And you can see, here's how I see myself, here's how these different groups of people see me. And you start saying, whoa, I either rated myself higher than most people rate me on these things, but lower than how people rate me. They rate me better in some areas that I thought I wasn't as good at. It's basically being able to really see yourself through the eyes of other people. So yeah, our emotional intelligence assessment does that, but I recommend the 360 because you really get to see how other people see you.
And generally speaking, is there usually a big disparity between how I see myself and how the people that take it on me or about me see myself? I mean, generally speaking, most people.
Yeah, no, not a big discrepancy. There might be a bit, there's, I don't know how many questions there are. Let's say that there's 48 questions or 60 questions. There might be a big discrepancy on 2 or 3 of the questions. But, in general, it's not that far apart. Some people rate me better. Some people rate me worse on different things. But unless somebody really has some emotional issues, they, even though there's a bias to rate yourself better than you really are, you don't rate yourself that much better than reality.
Interesting.
So, and really, if I were to look at here's how I see myself and here's how others see me, the fact of the matter is, the reality is, it's probably closer to how other people see me because I have an intention of how I think I'm coming across, but they tell me how I'm actually coming across, how I'm actually impacting them. And that's really the important thing. It's not how I think, how I believe, how I intend. It's how it comes across to them. And that's what's really important.
We could talk all day. I got to ask this question though, because as doing mentoring and with clients, they're all very different. Some of them, if they're younger, particularly, they're very sensitive. And so how does that come into the mix? Because if I was going to give this instrument to one of my mentees, if you will, and they say, oh, they would rate me as hard and harsh, but they're really sensitive. I mean, how do you compensate for those kinds of differences?
Well, how you compensate for it is you use a composite of a group of people, not just an individual. Because just like an individual may have a bias of how they see themselves, any rater may also have a bias based on what you're mentioning. So that's why, for instance, one of our biggest assessment is the DISC assessment, DISC, dominance, influence, steadiness, conscientiousness. And we have a 360 there. And what we do is when we give the report on the left-hand side of the page, this is how you see yourself. The right-hand side of the page, this is how the composite of everybody sees you. And it's the whole thing of what do I call it? Something to the norm, moving to the norm.
Right.
Where we have a whole group of people, and then it goes into the do's, the don'ts, what motivates you, issues. Every page has a different thing. Here's how you rated yourself. Here's how they rated you. And by the way, we do the same thing with couples. We could have a couples report where on the left-hand side is James, the right-hand side is Bersabeh. That's your style. That's your style. And you start seeing, whoa, here's how different we are in terms of what motivates us, what excites us, our do's and don'ts. And a lot of times clergy or counselors use this in marriage counseling,
Mm.
premarital counseling, in the business environment, conflict resolution, where there's two people who have to work together, or two partners in a business. Really plays. There's some great things that this does. One of the problems I have with in general in the past with assessments is they were one and done. People would take the assessment, they'd look at their report, they'd file it away, and that's it. Sort of like I
Right.
did with that, where it said that I was
Should
number
be a
one public
speaker.
speaker. I put it away. But what we do is we show people how to use these assessments in various environments. It's not just for personal growth. It's not just to improve your communication skills. What about team building? What about conflict resolution? Even in terms of hiring potential employees. How does the employee fit in with the rest of the employees? How does a potential salesperson? We use benchmarking, which basically is, here's how a candidate scored, and here's what we're looking for in sales, the ideal salesperson. Yeah. How does that match? We even give a percentage, 72% match, 85% match, et cetera.
Well, obviously I'm sold, and I know that, and I've been sold for a while. I know what you're doing is really of importance, and I hate to wrap this up, and yet we have to at some point in time. That's how it works. And I know you have a gift for our audience, our viewers today. So why don't you tell them a little bit about what your gift is, and it's going to play right off of what we've just been talking about, I'm pretty sure.
All right, let me show you what this is. Can I share my screen?
I sure can.
Sure.
Let me give you, I will give you permission. Here is it. Multiple. Here you go. You should be able to know.
There we go. Okay. So let me show you what I want to share with everybody. If you can see that, it's about the DISC, the whole concept of the DISC assessment. Wait, I don't want to play that. Excuse me. Let me move away from that. I'm sorry. I clicked on the wrong thing.
That's okay.
Okay.
He looks familiar.
That was not what I wanted. Let me go back to, here it is. Okay. So there's 7 sections here. It's a course filmed at the Lightspeed virtual training company in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. So there's 7 sections here. We get into adaptability in number 4, team building in 5, leadership in 6, sales and service in 7. We typically charge $99 for this, but for you guys, it's free. And in fact, I'm going to put the link in the. I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to put the link in the chat box if you will allow me.
Yes.
So if people click on this link, they'll go to that course, which I put together for you. The first 4 sessions are an overview of DISC. This is we've talked about emotional intelligence. DISC is at its core about emotional intelligence. We may or may not use the term. We talk about the platinum rule, which is do unto others as they would have you do unto them. And that's what this course is about. It's about adapting to people, communicating effectively. And I think once people even look at the first one, you'll see it's very professionally produced, nice and crisp, good visuals, but a real good learning experience. So, and after they take this, if they want to take the DISC assessment, they can either connect with me or ask you how to do it, but to actually take the assessment itself. So.
We'll make sure and post. This gets posted across all of social media. We'll make sure and post the link below. Yeah. So, Tony, it's been a joy and a privilege to have you here today. And as always, you bring so much experience and value, and we really, really appreciate that. And so, thank you so much for your friendship and your time today, and for sharing. God bless you. Lots of love to you and Sue, and hopefully Bersabeh and I will see you guys again really soon.
Absolutely. Either in Vegas, we come there, or you come back to San Diego. Okay.
Right. Okay. All right.
All right.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.